just leave a field to breathe for a while. And that sense that for all of us, we in our lives, in our routines, whether it's weekly, monthly or annually, to sort of have a fallow time of just being device free, of being clutter free, and just sort of being.
Power to Live More with Jo Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello. My name is Ellie Dodds and I'm co-presenter, and today Jo's interviewing Joanna Lamb. Jo is a third sector writer, researcher and PR specialist, currently working for Mission Aviation Fellowship, MAF, the world's largest humanitarian airline. Jo has a passion for storytelling and experience in fundraising, campaigns and generating media coverage for small charities and NGOs. Her drive to make a difference in the world has led her to write moving stories which inspire action, both in a freelance and full-time capacity. Travel, photography and community action projects also drive Jo to explore and respond to the world's many needs, which have seen her meet and showcase the complex lives of many fascinating people at home and abroad. Jo recently published her first book, Above and Beyond, an illustrated history of MAF's life-saving air service. Based in Hythe, Kent, Jo has an interest in sea swimming and recently completed a 75 swim fundraising challenge for MAF to raise awareness and funds to mark the charity's 75th anniversary. This endeavour positively impacted her physical and mental well-being during a season of tight lockdown restrictions, and living beside the English Channel brings inspiration, encouragement and energy to the life of a busy working mum. Winter sea swimming is now part of her daily routine, releasing much needed positive endorphins to kickstart her day. Jo has 2 children, aged 2 and 4, and also finds daily encouragement from prayerful meditation, running, and preparing fresh meals shared around the table with her family. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Jo Lamb of MAF. Welcome, Jo. Thanks for joining me.
Hi Jo, from one Jo to another.
Exactly. So start by telling us who you are, what you do, and crucially, where you do it.
So I'm Jo, and I work for an organisation called Mission Aviation Fellowship, MAF, and it's a humanitarian airline. I'm based down in Kent, not a million miles away from Jo herself, down near the sea, just outside Folkestone, where we've got a headquarters for MAF, but actually the organisation works in 27 developing countries across the world. So it's got a sort of a fundraising headquarters and a comms headquarters here in Kent, but actually operates internationally. So I do PR and comms, and love writing. Done lots of sort of work in the third sector in fundraising and in copywriting. So I'm really passionate about telling a story, really, and getting people to act and respond on behalf of their philanthropic desires. And it's really real privilege to have been part of this organisation, which has been running for 75 years now. So last year, 2020, was the 75th anniversary of MAF, founded in the aftermath of World War II by a handful of Christian airmen and women who thought, there's loads of planes everywhere. They were used to destroy, but can we use them for good, for peace, and to actually rebuild the world a little bit, which had been devastated by war? So some fantastic years of service around the world, just flying humanitarian aid and personnel, medicine, and relief workers to very, very, very remote places that are hard to reach by land. So that's kind of what the charity does, and I do PR and comms for them.
And do you usually work from their office, or are you at home
normally?
I work at the moment part-time. I'm a mum of two. I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, so I'm working 3 days a week at the moment, and usually I would be based in the offices, but since the pandemic we've all been working remotely, and who knows if that's going to be a kind of ongoing theme of our lives. It's actually can be very handy as a mum who's got a school run and lots of things to juggle. Actually having a bit more of a flexible home working family balance balanced life is quite easy, and we've got used to it now. So who knows, but I do definitely miss the interaction with colleagues, especially in quite a creative role when you're planning campaigns and you're planning sort of messaging and strategies. It's really difficult to do that remotely. And also I wrote a book last year as well, which was a little bit of a group effort with some other colleagues of mine, but I sort of led on the project, and it was really difficult to get the whole thing pulled together on Zoom screens and trying to look at proofing and choosing images and layouts and spreads and things. That was a real challenging project to do remotely. So I think once life gets back to a bit of more normality, and who knows when it will be fully normal, a bit of interaction with face-to-face is certainly something that I really desire.
Yes, yeah. It was a bit of a blast from the past when we got in touch about the podcast, because I don't know, most listeners won't know, I used to run local magazines, and one in the town where we both live, and I remember doing an article about MAF. So I saw it and thought, hang on, I know who they are, why do I know? So I had to go Googling or searching in my emails to find an email to tell me who they were, to then work out how I knew them, sort of thing. And so it's been a good few years since you were in my space, if you like, but I remember then when we did the article, I don't know if it was to commemorate something in particular, but it was, I'd never heard of you, and I haven't really thought much in between times, to be honest, and to hear that you're having that impact across so many countries from our little neck of the woods, it's really impressive.
It is amazing. It's actually a bit of an untold secret, really, especially in Kent, and it's really my job and my mission to get that name out there, to get the cause known, and lots of people will have heard of the partners. We partner with over 2,000 organisations. We've got the WHO and the United Nations and the Oxfams and the tier funds of this world, and many of the relief workers and the humanitarian specialists and the vaccine clinics that want to operate in the middle of nowhere. There's literally no other way of accessing those remote villages without an MAF plane, because lots of the places we operate, there is rainy seasons during a lot of the year, in Africa particularly, and parts of Asia, roads just become completely impassable. And so it's really a vital service to get the help that people need to where they are.
So tell us more about how you got to doing this. I often say, and I was having, in fact, a discussion about this only yesterday with a friend about how the fact that we often talk about jobs in the future not being what they are now, but most of the people I talk to on my podcast are doing jobs that I'm sure they didn't plan to do back in the day, because they didn't exist then either. So I don't think it's a new thing. What did you do before? How did you end up becoming who you are now, working with the charity that you're working with?
Well, I was all, I guess, by accident. I stumbled into the third sector. I kind of took a while. I travelled for 3 years, and I studied art and design, and then I did a politics degree, and I thought, oh, what can I do? And I actually met my partner, funnily enough, who's from Folkestone, and I came down here and I got a job at a little tiny charity based in Ashford, and did a bit of training in fundraising, and really got really fascinated about the third sector, and I think started to become quite passionate about using my skills and my talents to make a difference, really. And I'm not saying that a corporate environment is something I wouldn't want to try and experience in the future, but certainly I get an awful lot of fulfillment out of working for charities and seeing the difference they can make in people's lives. And actually, there's a big argument, isn't there, to say that every single penny of the pound that's donated to charity needs to go directly to the cause. But still people do expect that charities are treating their staff well, which means they need a good HR department, and people expect that their adverts are really powerful and catchy, and so they need a really good and creative comms team. And they want to know that the stories they read about the work that's being done are powerful and impactful, which means research trips and all the other things. It's almost like running a charity is like running a business, but also you've got to be changing people's lives. So I really feel passionate about putting my skills and talents into that sector and trying to do it as professionally as possible and with the excellence that is needed now to be sort of at the forefront of your field, which we all want. We all want to be as good as we can be and improving and innovating and challenging the status quo. And I very much believe that charities are at the forefront of doing that as much as any businesses. And we've got to come up with constant new ideas and constantly facing challenges in finance. And of course, the pandemic has hit us very hard as well in many ways. But it's a privilege really to be a part of something that's beyond just me and my life and my bread and butter on the table and my family. So it's good to know that what I do makes a difference.
And before we start, I ask if there's sort of specific questions to ask you, and one of the questions you suggested was about how does an awareness of the humanitarian and charity sector drive your daily life and decisions? And that's sort of a leading question for me, because I know you've got something big to tell us about that you've done as a result of this. But before as part of getting to that, tell us a bit about how that affects your life and what you do and why you're doing what you do.
Yeah, I think actually, the COVID season, which is really will have shaped our life and will continue to shape it. I'm thinking for maybe months, years to come. It's really narrowed our world down so much. It was amazing to me that I was trapped almost inside my four walls with my kids knocking around, and you're just trying to put one foot in front of the other and get through each day. And I just really loved being able to come to work and realize that there was a military coup in Myanmar, or that there was a measles outbreak in South Sudan, or there was life-threatening floods in Uganda that weren't cutting through the headlines. Many of these stories that were dominated understandably by the COVID pandemic. I think it's very important to understand that there are issues and there are challenges and there's illness and there are needs beyond our own economy. And so I personally just kind of like to feel a bit connected to the bigger picture, really. And it's something that I know a lot of people are passionate about doing. And I've got quite a few friends actually who started out with sort of city jobs and doing things for big businesses and maybe accounting or marketing or PR, and they're actually really desperate to change to a third sector job, just because they realize how narrow your vision can be when you don't realize what's going on kind of outside of our world. And we are incredibly privileged to be where we are, and I'm not saying that I don't love the home comforts that we can enjoy and feel very very grateful for my home and my family and my culture where we are here in Kent in the UK. But I do think it's important to be able to explore and research, but also one day we can hopefully travel again, but to visit some of these places. And I've done some mission trips, been very privileged to be part of a church actually locally that's very active in a couple of nations. One of them is Burkina Faso. I've been out there to build a school with a team from our church. There was about 30 of us all together that raised over about 50,000 first trip, and about 30 the second, to go and build a house.
Wow.
And a school for in a village where there was literally no education. And similarly, another project in Mexico, building houses. And it's yeah, I think it's just really good to be able to immerse yourself in other people's poverty and come away. I was listening actually to a podcast the other day. The CEO of Habitat for Humanity was saying, his role is incredibly important, and he's overseeing teams of thousands. I think they've got about 7 million volunteers worldwide, and they work in 70 countries, but yet he still feels it's so important to go actually visit these grassroots projects and experience on the ground what people are going through. And I would almost guarantee that you go on one of these trips and you will be overwhelmed by joy, which is something that we can't often fully grasp when we have so much, but yet joy when you have so little is so authentic and powerful. So we can learn an awful lot from people that live with very little, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a bit about the sort of big thing that you've done in relation to the charity and so on.
Yeah.
On top of what you've already said, you're locked down with 2 under 5s and doing a job, of such importance. And yet you took on a massive challenge. Tell us more about that.
Well, as I mentioned last year, so 2020 was the 75th anniversary for MAF's operations. And I was gutted, really. We had to lay down an awful lot of plans that we had. We were hoping to do a big event in London, and we'd got various campaigns that had to be put on hold. And I had helped lead a book project, and did a lot of the writing on that book, and we would have promoted it and sold it in a lot of face-to-face events. And I thought, do you know what? It got to November, it was really chilly and miserable. Christmas was looking like it was going to be pretty chilly and miserable. And I thought, I just need to do something to get word out about this amazing charity, to talk a bit about my book. And so, living very close to the sea, I decided to take on a 75 sea swim challenge. So it was the 1st of November, tried to get 75 sea swims in before the end of 2020. So that meant more than once a day during November and December. There was actually a campaign called the 7 and 5 campaign that the MAF launched towards the end of the year, trying to get people to do things 75 times or run 7 miles 5 times a week or something like that. And so I thought, do you know what? I can do this. I can do something a bit crazy to raise some awareness and to just sort of challenge myself, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm loving the fact that you said, it was a bit, dark and dingy and cold. And then your solution to that was go swimming in the sea.
Wow.
And my question as well is, were you wishing it was only the 25-year anniversary at any stage?
Oh, I must admit, there were a couple of days where it was just the conditions were not very favourable. It was windy, it was raining, and it was pretty bleak. And those days, I think we probably all will look back on those lockdown winter days, and we'd never fully realised how quickly the light goes and how late the sun comes up, and it just felt dark all the time. So yeah, it was definitely challenging, but also I think it became actually a little bit of an addiction. I really, really looked forward to it in a crazy way, and especially some mornings, just being able to watch the sunrise, freezing cold but absolutely beautiful and glorious. And I know that it's built momentum, not anything to do with me, but actually the momentum of sea swimming, both in Kent and around the UK, I know has massively increased since the pandemic, and people have found huge health benefits from it, physically and mentally. So I can certainly vouch for that.
Yes, it's supposed to be very good for well-being, and particularly sort of mental health, isn't it? I remember, who did I see? Was it Dr. Chatterjee? Did he do a TV program where he was helping people with ways other than using, drugs and all the sort of traditional, or perhaps traditional is not the right word, the mainstream ways of treating. Yeah. And he got somebody to go swimming every day for.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard of him promote it, and people like Reverend Kate Botley that does lots of radio too, and obviously she's very well known, but she swears by it as being something that keeps her going. So it's certainly becoming more popular, and it's just so fortunate to live
where we are
10 minutes from the sea. So I think if I had to get in the car and drive to go reach the shoreline, it would be a huge barrier to getting in,
or worse than that, having to drive a long way to get home after you get out in your freezing cold.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've been vicariously watching things like that because one of my friends sea swims a lot here and he posts it on Facebook, so I just watch the posts. I don't really do cold or water, so I'm not really cut out for it, I don't think. But
you should try it. Start in August, and before you know it, it'll be Christmas, and you won't have even realised that the sea has actually dropped in temperature by about 8 degrees.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, well, I think October is the warmest time. Actually. My husband sails, so he's always telling me that it's warmer by the end of the year before it gets to the very end of the year, and obviously, as you say, then it does drop a lot.
February is around 6. I think that's about the coldest.
Yeah. So such an amazing achievement, and sounds like it's created a new sort of hobby generally, rather than it just being about the 75 years.
Yeah, so I did my final swim on New Year's Eve. It was a real moment, actually. It was a wonderful, because I'd sort of dreaded, that last one and wanted to get a bit of video footage and popped open a bottle, and it was New Year's Eve and it had been an awful year, 2020. We just wanted to see the back of it, really. And I thought, it's going to be blowing a hoolie and I'm going to drag the kids down and they're going to be crying. But it turned out to be a glorious sunset, and it was quite a touching moment. I think I'll actually remember that for a long while, thinking it's been a real privilege and quite life-changing for me, in a sense that it's given me something to focus on. It's given me a bit of me time. I'm sure there's plenty of busy working mums out there that just find that they struggle to find their thing that they can do to escape, to get a bit of sort of health and mental replenishment. And for me, it doesn't take long, especially in the winter. Gosh, I'm only in for sort of 5 minutes or so. But it really does make me feel amazing afterwards. And it's so healthy. And I'm not saying I don't consume unhealthy things like wine and gin and tonic, which I definitely do. But knowing that I've had a sea swim sort of makes me feel better for those things. Yeah.
That's lovely. So tell us a bit more about how you get done what you get done. I mean, as you said, now's a different time with the pandemic and everything else, but how do you manage getting your work done, doing the things that you need to do, looking after the children, making that break between work and home and all that sort of thing?
No, it's a good question. I'm up very, very early. My 2-year-old's anytime from 5ish. So I always feel that if I'm up, I try to do some exercise first thing, and quite often that'll be me in front of a workout session on my iPad in the kitchen. Nothing very impressive, really, but sort of doing one of those and then jumping in the sea when the sun rises, and by sort of 7 o'clock I'm feeling like I'm ready for the day. Definitely productive time for me is first thing. So it sounds very silly, but I quite often like to use my slow cooker. I try and plan ahead for the evening. I know by 5 I'll be done for, especially if I've been up since before 5 a.m. So getting something in the slow cooker, getting a bit of exercise done, and being able to have a bit of headspace. I do like, if I can grab some time for a bit of prayer and meditation as well, that always helps. It's not always possible. Sometimes it's with CBeebies on in the background, which isn't entirely peaceful. But definitely I find those early hours, if you can grab them, when it's not life isn't at such a fast pace, I find them really important for me to get my head around the day. And sometimes actually the night before I fall asleep with a bit of a mental list going around my mind of, what have I got on the day tomorrow? So it's sort of still there going around as I wake up. So you can get to those things fairly early.
And what about sort of technology, to-do lists, calendars, all that sort of stuff? What sort of tools are you using?
Well, I'm quite old-fashioned when it comes to apps, and you sort of asked me about this before we chatted, and I was racking my brains if there was something really cool, and I can't really tell you a like really cool new thing that I do. One thing I find, I know I do quite a bit of running as well, and people use various running apps to log their progress, but I'm really quite a competitive person, and if I was to publish or post online either my exercise, my tasks, or my calendar, and other people could see it, I know I'd become really obsessed and addicted to it, and wanting to sort of be faster or do better or go further. And so I know that for myself I need to keep things quite simple so that it doesn't take over. So I find the old pen and paper approach, for me, it's quite personal. I like it to be personal. I like it that I can look at it and it's not online and it's not in the public domain, which so much of our life is these days, especially with social media. So old-fashioned written lists, and I'm a bit sad. Sometimes I write down things that I weren't on my list that I've done so that I can tick them off. I don't know if anyone else is out there that does that.
Yeah,
I add to my list when I've done something.
In common with many of my guests, you use pen and paper, and in common with also many of my guests, you write things down that you've already done to tick them off. I do the same.
Yeah, it's just so satisfying, isn't it? And it makes you feel great at the end of the day when you look at all the things you've done, and most of them weren't the things you were set out to do.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So I can't confess to having anything super snazzy and digital, but I do like a diary and a calendar and a pen and paper list.
Yes, yeah, lovely. Tell us a bit more about the writing of the book. You said that was quite hard with being locked down and on Zoom rather than face to face. What was the sort of process that you went through?
Yeah, so the book was commissioned before COVID was a thing, and I sort of started research information gathering stage when I could still speak to people and have access physical books and files, and MAF has got a really amazing archive of some footage taken from back in the 40s, 50s, 60s from some of the early pioneers who flew those rickety planes into lost jungles. So incredible stuff, really, and thankfully I was able to gather a lot of the early information for the book. It's a historic account, actually, the book. It's called Above and Beyond, and it's an account of 75 years of MAF, and it looks chapter by chapter. It kind of covers each decade of the airline's work. So started probably about a year in total from start to finish. So just before lockdown was the beginnings of the book, and then lots of the writing was done from home, which in a way was quite good, because it's good to be able to. I do a lot of writing, and I always need real quiet place to concentrate and get in the zone. And I actually ended up doing quite a lot of my writing in the evening. Sort of late into the night is when I found that I would be most productive in those particular projects. But yeah, it was just over a year in total that it took to write and finally get it to press. And it's actually an illustrated book as well, so there's loads of amazing photographs in there. It's a coffee table book, so lots of stories and information, but also some amazing pictures, just sort of amazing views from tiny plains of jungles and swamps and deserts and places that you could never really fly to in a EasyJet plane.
Nor would you want to, probably.
No, but there were a couple of times when I sort of thought, oh, I know there's a picture and it's of a lady and she's in a red dress in Bangladesh, and it was taken about 20 years ago, and there's that person that I could have just walked around to their desk and they had it as their screensaver, and I could have said, oh, where's that photo saved? And when we were in lockdown, it was like sometimes finding a needle in a haystack, looking for particular images or particular people to give quotes and contribute to the book. It was more tricky for sure, but definitely a sense of achievement now that it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds really exciting, and it sounds like a really sort of lush book with all that history in there, and as you say, the photos and all that sort of unusual unusualness of it. I'm not sure that's the right phrase, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's great to be able to flick through, and if it's an organisation you don't know a lot about, you could spend 5 minutes with a coffee just flicking through the pictures, and you'd learn an awful lot without reading a single word. So that was the idea, that it would be visual but also really inspiring and informative at the same time.
Yeah, I'm thinking mother-in-law Mother's Day present or something like that, actually.
Yeah, good idea.
That sort of thing. So yeah, sounds like a good plan.
It was nice as well to promote it during lockdown, because I know Amazon and online shopping was it was the go-to, and it was a lifesaver for most of us at Christmas time. But I heard quite a few people saying, "Oh, I just wish I could shop local, and I wish that I didn't have to give all my money to huge online giants." And so when it was Christmas 2020 and I was frantically swimming in the sea, I was saying, "Well, there is this book you can get, and it's local, and I wrote it, and all the money goes to charity, all the proceeds go towards MAF." And bless her, my mum was amazing. I think she bought about 20 copies, and all her friends were saying how good it was to buy something that wasn't delivered on Amazon and produced outside the UK. So yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, that's brilliant to hear. So what about learning and improving yourself? I don't know that you've got any time in all of the things you've just told me, but how do you do that?
Well, I do love a podcast, I must say. It's amazing, actually. It's the first one I've been able to be a part of, which is a privilege, but I do love a podcast. I like to run and listen to a podcast. So you mentioned Dr. Chatterjee earlier. I like his Feel Better, Live More is a good one. Brené Brown, quite a fan of hers. She's got one called Unlocking Us, which is an interesting conversation on various topics that she sort of specialises in. And one which is it was from a few years ago now. It was called Fight, Hustle and End Hurry. And the idea of it was about getting clutter and excess away from your life, and some really quite radical suggestions about kind of having one day in a week where you'd have no devices. And there's a sort of ancient tradition of having almost like a fallow year. So you'd leave a field, if it had been planted, you'd leave it fallow for a year. I think Glastonbury might do something similar, when you just leave a field to breathe for a while. And that sense that for all of us, we in our lives, in our routines, whether it's weekly, monthly or annually, to sort of have a fallow time of just being device free, of being clutter free, and just sort of being. And maybe the pandemic's brought that for some of us, which we just had to strip back. So I think looking forward to starting things a bit differently, maybe making life a little bit simpler, having family at the centre, and more reading, more swimming, more exercise, things that are quite simple and easy to do from home, which has definitely been a blessing.
Yes, no, I like that. I think the irony, of course, with the lockdown is that a lot of us have done decluttering, but there's nowhere to take any of the stuff.
Oh yeah, I know. That room in your house that's full of charity shop items.
Yes, exactly. I was Googling the other day trying to find places where you could sort of, take stuff or get rid of stuff at the current time, because people must need it. We just don't have a sort of way to get it to them.
I sometimes get charity bags through the door, and I've done this thing once where I left a massive bag on the doorstep, and it said it had Friday or something, whatever it's written on there. Yeah. And it was still there when I got back. They didn't come and collect it, so I don't know whether I probably did the wrong thing and had to phone a number or text them or something and tell them to come and collect it.
Funny you should say that. We've got one in our porch from a similar scenario, so maybe they just didn't come round that day.
I know.
But I did find one. I think the British Heart Foundation will pick up or something, but it's only like bric-a-brac and shoes and a couple of other things. I did a bit of Googling, and there are a couple of options I think that we were going to look into. And of course there's the clothes banks at the supermarkets. Those are still available. We've done a bit as well. But other than that, it's just piles of all our decluttered stuff.
And there's also the option, if you can be bothered with it, is the old, Facebook Marketplace. And I've I've benefited hugely from a few of those sales. My daughter's going through that stage, that wonderful 4-year-old, and all she wants to wear is a princess dress. And the two that she had were so stained and dog-eared that I went on and got a couple more for a £5, which means we've got about 3 more on rotation. As she's not in school at the moment, she's got her home uniform with a princess crown, and so it's a definite necessity.
I think that's a win for her, being able to wear that to school every day. That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. She'll be sad when she's got to go back to her normal grey pinafore.
Disappointment. Exactly. So, last couple of questions. Firstly, what about on those days where it goes horribly wrong? How do you deal with those days?
I don't deal very well under stress, I must say. I think if it was a professional setting, I definitely am a believer of a long, they say sort of maybe go make a tea or make a coffee, but you inevitably bump into that person in the kitchen who gets chatting, and it might be okay to take your mind off it. But I'm really sad. I used to just go for like a really long loo break, or even just go out and walk around the block. I literally would just need to be alone with my thoughts and sort of reason with myself and get myself back into the right frame of mind. Quite a lot of self-talk helps quite a bit for me. It might not for everybody. They might just need pure distraction and to start something completely new. But for me, it was just being on my own, I think, and that has been hard during the pandemic when we've all been locked inside, particularly with young children. It sometimes feels like there's nowhere I can go.
Find yourself locked in the toilet.
Or go in the bath and shut the door. But I think that's where the sea swimming has helped, is kind of getting out and getting that headspace that I've needed every day, which has been really good.
If only it was more than 5 minutes.
Oh, I know. Yeah, when the weather gets warm, nice and warm in the middle of summer, then it will be lovely to have a little sunbathe as well at the same time.
Yes. And the last question, I think you've answered some of this as we've gone, but those days where you get to live more, and that's where I say you get to do more of the things that you want to do and less of the stuff that you don't want to do. What do those days look like for you?
Definitely being outside. I mean, particularly with the age children I have, bless their little hearts, during the awful bitter winter, I still drag them out every day with their little red noses. And we splashed in puddles and we got really muddy, but do you know what? I think that is more important than I said. The princess dresses got wrecked, but I really loved it. I loved seeing my daughter jump in puddles in unicorn wellies and a princess dress, and I love not being too worried about being muddy, about being a bit chilly or being tired. And I think for me, being outdoors and for as long as I possibly can, it makes a huge difference to feeling like I've achieved in a day. If I've learned something new, that's a big achievement. Doesn't often happen. That's a big achievement. And I think
so much
I'm not sure about that, but also putting a nice meal on the table. I mean, it's not something I do every day. I mean, I can't confess to be one of those super mums that has blended their own purees from day one, but I think when you know that you've done a home cooked meal and the kids have eaten it nicely and they've been outdoors and you've touched base around a table, that for me is a real win. Doesn't happen every day, but it's wonderful to think that you're instilling some of those really good habits in your kids while they're young, and hopefully they'll take them on and into their future too. I try and cook with my kids too. They're really young and they throw stuff everywhere, but we put a slow cooker on with a spag bowl in the morning and got tomato puree up the walls, but at least they've been able to see how the process goes.
Sounds great fun. Lovely. Thank you so much, Jo. It's been so interesting talking to you. Tell people how they can find out more about you and get in touch and get the book and all that sort of stuff.
So Mission Aviation Fellowship is maf-uk.org. There's various different MAFs, so if you just Google MAF, you'll probably land on the US website, which is slightly different from us. So it's MAF UK, which is where we're based, and the book is called Above and Beyond. So it's MAF-UK/Above and Beyond, and that's just a really beautiful history of the organisation and some amazing stories of how little planes have changed people's lives around the world. So I'd highly recommend a little look at that. And my Facebook name is Joey Lamb, so you can see some of my crazy antics with the kids in the muddy puddles, probably mostly on there, maybe an inspiring quote or two every now and again. And I set up a Just Giving page for my swimming, and it's kind of kept going and it's building a little bit. So that's Joey Lamb 75 Swims on a Just Giving page that you can search and look for that. And any proceeds goes straight towards MAF, both for the book and for the swim challenge too.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jo.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to speak to you.
Attention home-based coaches and consultants. Are you tired of feeling alone, isolated, and frustrated with running a home-based coaching or consulting business? Are you sick of feeling like your life would be better and you'd be happier if you felt more organised and productive? Do you feel like there's simply not enough time in a day to get all the things done that you need to do to build a successful business while making time to live more? It's time to stop the isolation and start getting more organised, productive, and focused on the skills that will move the needle forward. It's time to join the Power to Live More Calm membership. If you're ready to, stop creating the wheel and focus on the things that truly matter in your life and business. Learn what you need to know to be successful and live more. Get accountability help from a group of like-minded home-based business owners. To learn more about the Power to Live More Calm membership program and apply, visit powertolivemore.com/getcalm.
All this information is available in the show notes. If you go to powertolivemore.com/ in this case 212, then you'll find them there. And this week my topic has been self-care tips. And at the Power to Live More Calm Gold members call this week, we talked about our individual self-care tips. And the biggest one that came up actually was about having a morning routine. And we talked about the various routines that people had. And it's interesting, you've heard me talk before and on many of my podcast interviews about the fact that I'm a night bird. I don't get up early and all these sort of get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do all these things before you start work to set yourself up for the day and all that sort of stuff. It's really not for me, certainly not at 5 o'clock in the morning. And even getting up later in the morning as I do, I guess I sort of take longer to come to and get used to the world. And so I do have routines. I do have self-care sort of things that I do, but they're not the same as the sort of 5 o'clock miracle morning stuff. You know, it's I might have a bath, or I might read my book, or do a bit of organising in my office or in the house or whatever before I get to my first call or the work I'm going to do from 11 o'clock. Not to say I don't work before 11, but if I do, it's you know, whatever sort of crops up at that time that I need to do. It's not pre-scheduled work because I purposely schedule my day from 11. But it's interesting, you know, sometimes I think people think that in order to have a morning routine that sets you up for the day, you've got to get up early and you've got to have it really structured. And I think that can be really helpful for people, and obviously many people find that helpful. But I think, as I say in everything that I talk about, really, all of this stuff is so individual, and it's really important to get really clear yourself on what works best for you, and, you know, tweak and change and do things differently if what you're doing isn't working or isn't quite working, or if it feels a bit off. But, you know, get really clear on what you need to do, whether that be in the morning or in an evening routine. We also talked a bit about how you close off your day, and one of our members was saying that she tends to do work in the evening, and she was sort of lamenting that she felt like she was sort of working too hard and she shouldn't be doing that. And one of the things that I said to her was, you know, are you enjoying it? Does it feel right? You know, are you feeling like you're missing out on other things? If you don't, you know, if it feels like this feels like the right thing to be doing, then, you know, don't worry about it. The fact that many people don't work in the evening doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't. And okay, I'm biased because I work in the evening too because of my nightbird tendencies. But you know, as I said, with all of this stuff, all of the productivity stuff that we talk about, it's so much about personal requirements, so much about, you know, what works for you, and not necessarily doing what other people say. So, you know, by all means, use other people to give you ideas, get tips, get ideas, and then try those things out, test those things out for you, and work out whether they give you more energy, whether they help you to focus better, whether they help you to get things done more than you would do normally, or whether it's the opposite. And obviously, you know, as I say on a regular basis, do more of the things that work for you and less of the things that don't. So think about your own morning routines, your own evening routines, and think about if they're working for you, and if they're not, why not, and which bits feel uncomfortable, and look at what you can do
to change them so that you have a routine that works the best for you. And that's just for you, not for everyone else, just for you. Again, the show notes of this week's show are at powertolivemore.com/212, and we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.